Congressman Steve Scalise is the House Minority Whip, and he joins us now. Congressman, good morning to you, and thanks for being here. Obviously, there are many sticking points and many areas of debate over how to reform the police in this country. But one of the biggest questions that the American people have is, can there be meaningful bipartisan reform that comes from all of this?
There really can, Sandra. And in fact, there have been a lot of good conversations between members, Republican and Democrat, the House and Senate. You're going to see the president, I think, roll out some significant reforms today on his own. Some things will still require congressional action, but at least those things that can be done administratively, you're already seeing President Trump go ahead and take his own action to start getting these reforms in place already. And so that's important. We need to keep working at this and make sure that what we do goes after bad cops, stops these bad practices that we're seeing, but also make sure we don't undermine the work that law enforcement officers do on a daily basis to protect communities and do things the right way to keep us safe.
Is ending qualified immunity off the table for you, Congressman?
Well, if you look even at qualified immunity, again, for somebody who crosses the line and does things the wrong way, for bad cops, that's something that shouldn't be in place. And in fact, when you look at a lot of these communities, it doesn't protect the bad cops. But qualified immunity is something that applies to a lot of people in public sector employment, not just for police officers. And let's look at those things that, again, chokeholds, banning chokeholds is something we've had a lot of agreement about. Why don't we focus on getting some real things done? Not a bill that was driven by partisanship, but bills that can actually get to the president's desk, get signed into law, and address these problems that we're seeing in communities where they need to do better training, where they need to do things to address these problems, and there's consensus to start getting that done.
Sounds like some area of agreement there with banning chokeholds. Kevin McCarthy, your colleague Tim Scott in the Senate, and others have also said that. So we'll see what comes from all of that. Meanwhile, as we see these protests continue across the country, there's continued concern over the spread of COVID-19. You have taken particular interest in the situation in nursing homes, the president holding this roundtable on the discussion of what happened and how we plan to prevent that from happening in the future. Here's the president yesterday.
We delivered $81 million for increased inspections and provided every Medicare certified nursing home with shipments of personal protective equipment. We are working very, very hard with the governors of the states on their nursing homes because obviously that was a very sad situation, what happened to some of the states where they didn't do a good job with respect to nursing homes. They were caught unaware.
And we saw what happened in New York, 6,000 nursing home deaths here. Over 40% of all deaths related to COVID-19 from nursing home patients. Congressman, you have taken particular interest in this, writing this last week on a per capita basis. Nursing home deaths in New York are 500% higher than Florida, and New Jersey is 1,120% higher than Florida. What are we doing about it, and what can we learn from mistakes of the past that led to that?
Yeah, Sandra, there are some heartbreaking examples that we've seen in some of these states where they did not follow the federal guidelines. CMS issued guidelines to every state. States run nursing homes, and we saw most states followed those guidelines the right way. But there were a few states where they went their own direction. In fact, they required that if somebody was COVID positive, that they had to be sent back to the nursing home, and expressly prohibited the nursing home from even checking to see if they were COVID positive. And in those states, we saw deadly results. And I'm talking about thousands of people that died in nursing homes in those states that should have never died. If the states would have followed the guidelines, meaning if you've got somebody COVID positive, you don't send them back to a nursing home if the nursing home can't properly isolate and take care of them. And yet that's the mandate that these governors gave in violation of federal guidelines. I've asked that we bring those governors in and ask them to explain why they violated the guidelines. And it gave these mandates that ended up killing thousands of seniors in each of their states. We're talking about tens of thousands of seniors who should not have died. Over 40% of COVID deaths in America came from nursing homes, and nursing homes only represent about 0.6% of the American population. So clearly there was a major problem. It's a major scandal. We've got to get to the bottom of it. Some of these governors, by the way, are still doing it. In Michigan, they're still doing this. They should end that practice today. And so that's important that we get this out there. Some of the states hid the data from us, and we're trying to get that data out there for the public to see.
The big question is going to be whether or not they ignored protocols. The governors of those states that you list in this letter, New York, New Jersey, California, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and others, or in the case of Andrew Cuomo, New York, he said he was following federal guidelines. Many of people have already called him out on that was not the case. But do you believe they ignored protocols, or do you believe mistakes were made? Final thoughts, Congressman.
No, in the hearing we had on this last week, I showed the CMS guidelines. They were very clear. In fact, CMS gave 14 different sets of guidelines to help ensure that seniors would be protected in nursing homes. And New York violated those protocols. They went a different direction. They haven't explained why they did, but the protocols are out there. Most states followed them. Again, this isn't some case of trying to figure out it on your own. The federal guidelines were clear. But about 40 states followed them properly, and a few states did their own thing. New York and New Jersey's orders were almost cut and paste identical. So clearly some of these governors were collaborating and said, we don't need to listen to the feds, we'll do our own thing. And thousands of seniors died in each of those states. Those governors ought to explain themselves, not hiding behind some bubble, but come out at a public hearing like this. Show us the rest of the data that they're hiding from the public about the real transparent issues on what happened in these nursing homes.
I know you plan to get to the bottom of that. So we will see what comes from all that. Congressman Steve Scalise from the state of Louisiana.